Every hobby, sport, or pastime has its own language, and boating is no exception. The roots of nautical terminology go back as far as the Vikings, and while some changes have been made through the years, a lot of the same terms still exist. Now, while I could simply keep talking and have you looking up everything I say as I say it, there are some basic terms that all boaters should be familiar with, and I really should take a moment to go over some of them here without using the nautical dictionary. So, let's take a walk through some typical boats while I point out some of the basics for you. Don't worry about memorizing everything the first time. You can replay this section as many times as you'd like until you're comfortable. For starters, we'll look at the big picture. Here's a boat as seen from above. If you're standing inside the boat, you are on board the boat. If you jump into the water, you're considered going overboard. While on board, you can look forward and aft. So far, so good? When we're facing forward, the left side of the boat is called the port side. Easy to remember since port and left both have 4 letters. If I look to the right, I'm seeing the boat's starboard side. The important thing to note here is that we're talking about the boat's port and starboard side, not yours, so they don't change when you turn around and face aft. Something lying straight out from either side of the boat is said to be on the beam. We have a port and starboard beam. Now while you're facing aft, you're seeing the stern. That's the rear section of the boat. Face forward again and you're looking at the bow. We're not standing on the floor, we're standing on the deck. If this were a cabin cruiser, we could go below decks or just below, but not downstairs. If we're below in the cabin, we can go above, but not upstairs. We steer the boat from the helm, turning where? Either to port or starboard, right? Do we have a bathroom on the boat? No, we have a head. You can go to the head or you can hit the head, but you don't go to the bathroom. The whole passenger area in the middle of the boat is the cockpit, and up forward is the bow. That's where the foredeck is located. Now going around the cockpit is the gunwale. You should never sit on it while the boat is underway. We are considered underway when we aren't tied to the dock, at anchor, or aground, which means stuck on a sandbar. Now, if we're drifting around with the tide, we're still underway, but not making way. Put the boat in gear, and then we'll be making way. Let's move forward towards the bow, and all the way up here at the forepeak is an anchor locker. Inside the anchor locker is the anchor and anchor chain and anchor line or rode. Let's go aft to the stern. The stern can be divided into 2 sections called quarters. There are only 2 quarters on a boat, the port quarter and the starboard quarter. This flat vertical partition going across the stern is the transom. After the transom is the swim platform, and it conceals a swim ladder. Underneath the swim platform is the outdrive that attaches to the engine. Back inside, I can lift up the engine hatch and get to what? The engine. And if I look at the area underneath the engine, I'll see the bilge. I may get water in the bilge from time to time, and if I do, I can pump it out with a bilge pump. Those big hoses down there are connected to fans called blowers that force out flammable gas fumes that settle into the enclosed bilge area. Those gases can cause an explosion when I go to start the engine, so the blower should always be run for at least 4 minutes to ventilate the engine compartment before turning the ignition key. Let's walk around the outside of the boat. Down here is the bottom of the boat. The part that comes in contact with the water is the hull. The hull comes up to the waterline just above the chine, where the bottom meets the sides, and then becomes the top sides above the waterline. The top sides end up at the rub rail, which protects the boat when it lays up against the dock. Now let's check out the cabin of a larger boat. We go below decks by way of a companionway. To port we have the main salon, and it's not opposite the kitchen, it's opposite the galley, which is to starboard. We have sleeping compartments, called a stateroom for the owner or master, and cabins or berths for everyone else. Forward is the master stateroom, and aft is the aft cabin or guest cabin, but not the after berth. Let's look out at the water. If you're connected to large bodies of water, the pull of the moon's gravity will pull the water and give you a high tide and a low tide. When the water flows with the tide, you'll have a current. The water comes in on a flood tide and goes out on an ebb tide. Just before it switches from one direction over to the other, you'll have slack tide or slack water when it doesn't move at all. The direction of the current is called set, and the speed is called drift. We can therefore have a current setting to the east with a drift of 3 knots. 1 knot is 1 nautical mile per hour. When listening to the Weather Channel, we get wind direction. Today we have an easterly wind. Is this direction where the wind is coming from or blowing to? The answer is from. Winds always blow from. Sitting on our boat, we notice that one side faces the wind, and this is the windward side. The side that is sheltered from the wind is called the lee or leeward side. Wind causes waves. Heading into the waves will give us a head sea, and if we turn the boat around, we'll be in a following sea. If the waves are hitting us from the side, we have beam seas. Now that's the rundown of the basic terms, and I know that there was a lot and it was a little fast, but you can play it again and again as much as you'd like until you're comfortable with it. Using these terms and the ones that come up throughout the course will help solidify your confidence in yourself, as well as aid in increasing your understanding of other boaters talking to you.